We're back now for another episode of the Wealthy Way podcast. I got my co-host Blake Hassebrock and my boy JB, and we're going to be talking about estate planning today. This is something Blake asked me about recently, and he just saw a story about this Patagonia founder. What happened with him?
Yeah, man. So Yvon Chouinard, legend. This guy's a legendary rock climber from Yosemite back in the 1960s. Everybody knows Patagonia, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, $3 billion clothing company. They've been super active in, climate change and environmental preservation, all that stuff. And this guy just gives his company away this week out of nowhere. Just gave his company away to a nonprofit in the interest of contributing to the climate change efforts, the efforts to obviously like reverse climate change and address it. So that got me thinking, man. $3 billion company. He's got a couple kids that work actively in the business. And, instead of cashing out and giving his kids the money, he signed the company over to the nonprofit. And I'm like, man, I wonder what Ryan would think about this. Like, what are you going to do with your companies when you're 83 and James and O are like, hey, Dad.
I got great grandkids and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough thing to do, but it's pretty noble what he did.
Yeah, this is something interesting that obviously you don't really start thinking about until either you're older or you've achieved wealth. And I'm not older, but I have achieved wealth. And so one thing I've done is create my trust.
Right.
So, I've got a will and a trust of what exactly happens to the companies and money and all these things. And what's funny is I've been updating the trust about every 2 years as my life has changed, right? As new people enter into my life, as the businesses grow, as people exit my life. And it's actually changed a lot, like not only with wealth, but like we have to put, hey, who's gonna take care of James and Olivia if we both die?
Exactly.
Right? Like, is it gonna be Mindy's parents, my parents? What if both parents die? Right? And these are questions like we have to answer.
Right.
And just in case, and they're very, hopefully long shots, but how do we do that? What happens for everyone in this office, the companies?
Right. Yeah. Who runs the companies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are things that are all outlined in the will.
Because you've got how many employees do you have total?
Probably close to 100 with all these different companies.
That's like having 100 kids.
Yeah.
Because when I think of, if I'm about to go on a dangerous trip canoeing or something, I do whitewater canoeing with my buddies. I like to tighten up the trust before I go. I know that sounds morbid, but I'm like, okay, just want to make sure this is updated with all the new assets, and I'm gonna go have a good time and not worry about dying the whole time, and leaving my children with nothing. But for you, you've got 100 people that rely on the companies to run, and I'm sure Yvon Chouinard has a trust in place, taking care of his family, and I'm sure they're all good to go. It's not like they're going to be homeless now that he's given his company away. It sounds more so that he's given away the responsibility of managing the profit of the company for the future, and he's dedicated that to climate change. And a piece that I heard is the nonprofit, which I'm not an expert in nonprofits, so this may be every nonprofit that's involved with any kind of agenda, but the specifics of the nonprofit were to battle climate change and support politicians who stood for climate change. So I'm sure the nonprofit that was created specifically for this will probably be in some way affected by Yvon Chouinard's will. Like he'll choose what they do, maybe.
Yeah. There might be conditions on the donation. Obviously, there definitely will be conditions, because if the nonprofit's not a good shepherd of what he built, I'm sure there's some kind of stipulation that it can be pulled back.
Right, and the kids are still involved in running the company. So they're not skipping a beat.
Yeah,
the company's going to be run per usual. All the employees are still getting paid.
I'm sure too, as kids, I mean, obviously they've probably made a lot of money, and they probably have their own shares of the company that they own. And this was strictly his deal.
And it might be a mastermind scheme of like, now that's a huge write-off.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother thing with tax and wealth and all that stuff. I mean, nobody knows where the tax situation will be when you die. But there's a lot of stuff that happens when you die where if you structure it wrong, your kids inheriting the money owe a lot of tax and they're not getting it. And if you structure it right, all the tax goes away. It's funny, like there's a joke when you 1031 a building, they're like, when does it stop? Well, for those who don't know, a 1031 is basically if you have let's say a piece of real estate and whatever, it's $500,000, you go sell it a few years from now, you get $1 million for it. Typically you would pay tax on $500,000. That's what the gain was. But you can instead say, hey, I'm going to 1031 exchange this into a new property. And so you could take all that profit and buy an even bigger property. So maybe you take the $500,000 gain and you go buy a property for $2 million now.
Right.
And you use it as the down payment. And now you have a property for $2 million, you don't pay any tax. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And all of a sudden now, this one property that you bought 30 years ago is now in a $20 million property, right?
Totally. You still haven't paid tax on it.
You still have never paid tax on it. And so the question becomes, hey, when do you actually pay tax on it?
Right.
Or when does that happen? It's like, well, ideally in a 1031, what ideally happens is you die. And you die and you pay no tax.
Wow. Because the estate tax, at least currently, doesn't apply to your assets when you die and hand them down.
I mean, dude, there's all these different laws. I couldn't even tell you. I let Matt, my partner at True Books, handle all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like kind of the basis of the 1031. Like just literally, they call it, this is the saying they say, swap till you drop.
Yeah.
You keep swapping properties until you drop dead.
Yeah, I mean, like anything else, man. And then those guys that are doing that, typically, if they do need cash flow, they'll leverage the assets for cash flow.
Yeah, like think about it. If I was in this property and I just kept leveraging and retrading up and up and up, eventually I could borrow against that $20 million property, go borrow $5 million. It's still tax free.
Right. And is that always through like a HELOC product? What does commercial look like? Is there a HELOC for commercial real estate?
Yeah, I mean, there's all different types of lines of credit you can get. I mean, they wouldn't be called a HELOC, but same principle.
Same principle. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff on, like the infinite banking and how the uber wealthy leverage their assets to spend cash while their assets continue to appreciate.
Yeah.
And just haven't really thought twice about it because I'm not in that ball game yet. I'm still playing Little League.
Yeah, I'll share with you guys later in the episode kind of like things I thought about for my will and what Mindy and I had to have really hard conversations on.
Yeah, man.
But I'm curious, like you guys, JB, what have you thought about in terms of like death and everything when it comes to money and anything? Have you thought about it at all?
Yeah, I mean, I have, because I've had experience, like with my father passing away, I've got to experience what it was like for very little to be, prepared for in that situation because it was so unexpected. So as of now, like, me and Ashley, we always discuss, like, if this happens, what do we do next and what happens? For me, it ain't like I got a whole lot of assets or, a bunch of money to sitting on that, the kids are going to fight over. But I still, you never know if something, if I get uber successful for some reason and things work out in my favor, I want there to be clear, definition on what I want to see happen and what.
Why you say if?
It's not that I'm even thinking that it can't happen. It's just today is going to be different than what tomorrow will be.
Right.
So I think like the discussion is important, if nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. I hopefully you have that discussion here in the next couple of years where you're like having to plan for it because things have changed dramatically.
Something that happened just this week kind of made me reconsider all of my asset protection measures. Like I've got a living trust to make sure the kids and my wife are taken care of if and when I die in a canoeing accident. No foreshadowing there. But
while we laugh at that.
Yeah, right. But, Justin, similar to your situation, like when I was young, my father passed away and he had a long stint in the hospital. So he left massive amounts of debt for my mom and I. That changed our life a lot for the negative. And, a similar situation happened with my stepfather. And so something that I haven't considered when planning for the kids is like canoeing accident. Okay, that's best case. Like it happens, you're gone. You have your estate that you've set up. They get your life insurance money and whatever assets you have. It's all set. You know who's going to take care of the kids, all that. What I've seen play out with my father and stepfather was kind of the worst case scenario that most people don't consider and that I didn't consider even until recently, because I found out my mother just got diagnosed with cancer. So it's something that hit home recently and made me reconsider, like, am I really prepared for the scenario, the worst case scenario, which is accruing massive amounts of medical debt. And maybe by the time you're done with your medical treatments and finally pass away, you don't have any assets or life insurance or any money left to leave to your kids. So I know my mom and stepdad had to get divorced, like even before things got really bad, because my mom had been through it with my dad, and she was basically like, look, this is only for finances, but we need to get divorced because all this medical debt that you're about to accrue is going to pass to me, my sister, and my mom. And they got ahead of it that way. But, you know, I don't want to, and none of, like, all the people who are watching this, your audience, I'm sure are mostly, they're all considering this kind of stuff. They're entrepreneurs, they're building wealth, and just having a will maybe not be enough. And you don't want to be in a position one day where you have to divorce your wife just to keep them from accruing your debt. So I guess my question to you, since, you know, obviously you've explored a lot of this asset protection stuff, is what's the solution for that?
Yeah, that was my same question. I just was interested in knowing, like, for the average person who has, you know, that doesn't have, you know, all of the assets and all the stuff that are at risk of this situation, what would you suggest to them, and, like, even on where to start in that process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great questions. So I think the first thing is life insurance. So that's number one. Everyone needs to have some form of life insurance. Now, you know, but like you brought up infinite banking and stuff, and that's, you know, a tool of which they're using life insurance to try and make more money. It's not necessarily they're using it for the life insurance for a policy in the way that I'm talking about. It's more like a financial tool. I'm talking about just get any kind of life insurance. Like, so for me, you know, I don't have whole life or anything that you would use for infinite banking, but what I have is a term policy. And so, like, it's very cheap a month. I want to say maybe like $50 a month. It's nothing crazy. And my policy is pretty big. It's an 8-figure policy.
Wow.
So if I die, Mindy will get an 8-figure payout. Don't tell her that. Don't.
Yeah, that's a bounty on your head.
Yeah, we don't need this bounty going on. Okay, you might have to edit that out. But, you know, I have a life policy. And, you know, granted, they're not going to go take some guy who works at 7-Eleven and be like, yep, this guy gets an 8-figure life policy because he's, you know, if he dies, his family's in trouble. Like, no, they're not. He works at 7-Eleven.
Right.
You know, but when you get a policy like this, they look at a number of factors. They look at how much you make. They look at your health, your age, all these factors, and they determine what your plan's going to be. And so they're like, okay, Ryan's young, he's healthy, he's in good shape, he don't smoke, he don't do any of these things. He's in as good a shape as you could be for a 33-year-old. And they do that, and then they look at, hey, what's Ryan's income? Okay, this is what he's making, this is what's going on with his family. All right, cool. Like, and then basically at that point they ask me, they're like, how big of a policy do you want to get, you know, based on the price and all these things. And I don't even know how we've settled on where it's at today. It probably needs to be updated again, right? Like, it's been probably 2 years since I updated it.
Gotcha.
And I don't know the ins and outs of the policy and all that stuff, but I just know if I die, like, you know, that they'll have a big payout right then and there. And anybody listening can do that. You know, anyone here, I would guess, could probably get, even the guy at 7-Eleven, can get like probably a $500,000 or $1 million payout if they die.
Definitely.
That's not to say, you know, I guess I take back what I said earlier about his family won't struggle. Like, I'm sure, obviously, if he dies, his family will have a hard time. but they don't need $10 million,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So,
Well, and a caveat to that too that I learned from a guy I worked for, actually. I was about to turn 30 and he came to me. He's an older guy. He's like, Blake, you got to get life insurance now if you're ever going to do it. Because before you turn 30, your premiums are much cheaper.
Way cheaper.
You can get a 30-year policy. And so I got like a $2 million policy for $40 a month or something.
Exactly. That's actually what I did. Now that you bring that up, I got my first policy back before I was 30.
Mm-hmm.
When I got my will done when I became a millionaire. So when I was like 29, I was like, hey, I should probably get a will now because somebody told me. Actually, what happened was one of my private lenders was like, hey, Ryan, do you have a will? And I was like, no. And he's like, you need to get a will, like not only for your family, but to protect my investment in you.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Because basically in real estate, right, all these properties I own, if I don't have a will or anything, it goes to probate. And probate is just a terrible process of what this is. And so he was the one who was like, dude, you need to look into it. And I was like, okay. And so I got it. And I was like, yeah, obviously I need this. And then I got life insurance too. And to your point, I think my first policy I ever got was about $2 million, just like yours. It's like $40 a month. And so I still have that policy today. So then what happened was I went to update my will and everything. I'm like, I should probably update my policy. $2 million ain't much for what I'm doing these days.
Right.
And so we updated it. And then I'm sure, and I guess the way it works is you have, now I have two policies because that first policy was one.
Right. You wanted to hold it because the premium's low.
Because, yeah, it was a good deal.
Yeah. Well, so that's obviously the most important first step is getting a life insurance policy so that your family, your assets, your debts will be paid and they will get the rest of what's left. I guess my scenario that I'm looking at, and this is how it went down with my dad, was, the life insurance policy, which I don't even think he had one, but even if he did, it probably would have been eaten up by medical debt,
right, and
still left us destitute. So is there a way to work around that through LLCs? And like, I know, for instance, the presidential conflict of interest with Donald Trump and his businesses, he turned everything over to his kids because he's not allowed to have a stake or profit in those businesses due to conflict of interest with foreign policy and all the different things. So I'm sure he structured things in a way that, he didn't show any ownership. And I imagine it would be similar to what you would want for your family. I just don't know how to do that. Does that look like an LLC that gets paid out on your assets? Or like, for instance, I've got around $2 million in real estate now, which is crazy because think about like a year and a half ago, I had just one house and we started talking about it. You'd been trying to talk me into it for years, and I finally kind of sacked up and started taking your advice. So I don't say that to brag, but just to like help people understand that it can happen really fast if you start taking healthy risk. But anyway, so now that I've got more assets, I am worried if something happened and I had to accrue medical debt, that it probably would leak and eat into this life insurance policy that I have. Maybe I should just update my life insurance to cover worst case. But
yeah, I mean, as you make more money, you should definitely think about upping your life insurance for sure. And then it just goes into, people might be thinking, should I get whole life or term? To me, like, at least get term because term is cheap.
Right.
Like you said, $40 a month, $2 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's bare minimum what everyone should do. Whole life, I still don't even understand all the ins and outs.
I know.
But
we need to get somebody on to talk about that at some point.
yeah, well, I mean, like I said, like I've had, like Chris Noggle on to talk about using whole life as a financial tool.
Right.
And putting money away into it as like a savings account.
Right.
Essentially. But, yeah, I don't know. For most people, it's just not super necessary. Term will cover for what we're talking about.
Totally.
So the next thing becomes, once you're taken care of on life insurance, it becomes your will. And so a lot of people, or will and trust, I should say, a lot of people don't know when's the right time. How much money do you need? All these things. Look, I'm not an expert on this. Everybody will say different things. But I do know, getting a will and a trust done is not cheap. I couldn't even tell you what I paid, but I would guess you're going to probably spend like $3,000-4,000 to go get one done. So, you know, the only reason you get one done, obviously, too, is if you have assets. So what kind of assets do you have? I mean, here's the deal. And I mean, I don't want to say everything is like an absolute because every state has different laws, but typically if you and your wife own your house together, if you die, she still owns the house. Like nothing's going to happen or change on that front. So, you know, if that's the asset, there's not much there. And I'm sure there are ways you could protect the house. There are things like called homestead that you could file against your house that basically prevent creditors from coming after your house.
Interesting.
So you can file a homestead on your house to prevent the scenario you're talking about. From there, you make the decision of, okay, all right, now that I do have other assets, maybe I own a business, maybe I, you know, own stocks or multiple rental properties or whatever, then at that point, you know, if you, I would say if you got like a multiple 6-figure net worth, you should have a will and a trust.
Yeah.
So today's podcast is brought to you by Future Flipper. So Future Flipper is a real estate education company that I founded back in 2018. And since then, we have helped thousands of students all across the country learn how to invest in real estate. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to learn how to flip houses, whether you're looking to wholesale or build your rental portfolio. We've helped everyone in all the different circumstances. This even includes people who have never done a real estate deal. We've helped beginners get their very first deal. We helped other people who have already done some deals scale to doing multiple deals a month. And we've even helped people get to my level, people to scale their business to doing over 100 deals a year, learning to become an owner of the company and not be involved in the day-to-day and learn how to delegate and hire employees at the highest level. So regardless of what boat you are in, we can help you out at Future Flipper. We've got amazing events. We've got amazing coaches. I coach directly in Future Flipper, and I would love to help you get to the next level. So all that being said, if you are interested in getting a free consultation call, a free strategy call to see what it's going to take to help you get to the next level, go to futureflipper.com and you can book a call with my team. Once again, check out futureflipper.com to book a call. I know that many of my listeners on this podcast are high-income earners in fields outside of real estate, and they always ask me, Ryan, how should I invest my money? Should I go start flipping houses? Should I buy an Airbnb? Should I buy rentals? What do you think? And I always say, look, a better use of your time is continuing to build your business and your career because you're already really good at it. Trying to go figure out how to do real estate deals on your own and managing construction and all that stuff is probably not the best use of your time, but you can still invest in real estate by joining Pineda Capital. We will do everything for you. We will find the deals, we will manage them, we will get them renovated, we'll get them rented out and everything else. All you've got to do is invest and you're going to get a return on your money. So if you want to figure out what is the next deal that you can invest in, you can go to PinedaCapital.com. Currently, we're only open to accredited investors only. So if you want to get in on our next deal and you want to get on the VIP list, definitely go to PinedaCapital.com and apply today.
It's crazy when you go to fill out, and well, when you go to create one, the kinds of topics you have to face. Like I've advised a lot of people to go get a will, and when I check up on them, hey man, did you go get the will and trust done, or your living trust? Because I want to clarify that.
You have yours right now?
I do.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
I do. And for anyone that
I thought you were advising people.
Yeah, and I don't have
I've
one.
advised people. I've heard that it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, that would have been a good call out. But no, I do have I do have a living trust.
So you got some assets.
Yeah, kind of a big deal.
So,
but the main thing that has, in my experience, kept people from going to do it is all of the decisions about death that you have to face when you go there. It's pretty morbid sitting down with a lawyer.
Well, that and it causes fights too.
Yeah, true.
Because for instance, to your point, the first time Mindy and I did it, right? We and I have to be very careful with what I even want to say on air. So the first time we did it, they ask you these questions, right? They say, hey, at the time, Mindy and I did not have any kids. We were married. Okay. So they're like, hey, what happens when you guys do have kids? Who's going to get the stuff? And it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll split them equally. Like, that's pretty simple. Okay, cool. Okay, now assuming you guys have kids, who are the kids gonna live with? And that's already the first fight.
Big time. My parents, your parents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So we got to make the arguments for who we think, and the case is for us. Like we both have great parents who live in Vegas. They're both awesome grandparents. Like there's no right or wrong answer. And then they ask, hey, so assuming both your parents are dead, like, dang, this is getting deep. Who are they living with?
Yeah, right.
Right. And Mindy's an only child, so she doesn't really have family on that side. I have my sister, but my sister ain't raising any kids. So who are they living with? So, that's a whole nother thing in itself.
So that's why you called me asking how many rooms we had
I'm like, Blake,
in our house.
how many rooms? How would you like to live on a mountain? If I die and my parents die and Mindy's parents die, would you be willing to take my castle on the mountain and live there and raise the kids?
Oh man, what a sacrifice. That would be. Yeah, I'll be that guy.
I'll do it. It's fine.
As long as I get your Southern Highlands membership.
It all transfers over in the will.
It's all in the will.
No, but seriously, those are morbid conversations, and they do start fights. And even if they don't start fights, it's still uncomfortable. Like having to answer who gets to decide if you're going to be pulled off of life support or not.
Yeah. I forgot we had to do that one too. Yep. So Mindy and I, we recently actually re-talked about this because I don't remember what I said 4 years ago or 5 years ago, but I think I was like, just pull me, dude. Like, let me be with Jesus and that's it. If it's my time, the sooner I'm in heaven, let me go.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, not going to do that. And I was like, those are my wishes. And then, I don't even remember what I said, but I think I changed my mind. And you know what? I did change my mind. You know why? Because as I've grown closer with God and just understanding the Holy Spirit and, healing and everything, I'm like, no, see if I have a miraculous healing.
Right.
You never know.
Yeah,
That's
man.
what happened.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Mine was, like I said, with my dad and my stepfather, and I've been through it with my grandmother in the hospital, and I've seen where doctors have the control, because I think, maybe somebody fact check me on this, but I think if you don't have a will, if you don't have a living trust with
You don't have any wishes.
with your wishes, then the doctor has say in what happens, either 100% or 50-50. When you make your living trust, you get to choose, okay, who has control. Either, for instance, for me, it's like my wife has complete control. And I'm just kind of realizing, in the same breath that I said I have a $2 million life insurance policy, I also say my wife has complete control to pull me off life support. So that'll test her out, but it'll test what she's made of.
Let him go.
The doctor's like, so what are we going to do? She's like, I'm on the phone with life insurance. Hold on. Gotta make sure. But
Yes, we'll buy it.
Yeah.
We'll buy the new house.
We'll take it. But yeah, it's just it's a morbid conversation, and I put my wife in charge because you never know what doctor you're going to have and if you trust them or not. I think there's so many amazing doctors out there, and I haven't really met any bad ones I wouldn't trust. But at the same time, I had to just put it on Erica, knowing my wishes and respecting what I want. But yeah, it's morbid stuff, man.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think, on the family side of it, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made that are really hard to make. And it's uncomfortable. We've had to go through it twice now, and it's about that time to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally at that time now where I think the second time we did it, we had James, and so that had to change. And I think Mindy was pregnant. So we knew we were, going to have Olivia. And it's probably time to update it again. But you got to make those family decisions. I mean, obviously you get the life insurance, and now
was that an announcement, Ryan? Did you just announce something to everyone by saying we had James, and then we had Olivia, and now it's about time to do it again.
No.
Okay.
There was no announcement on any third.
Oh
child.
man, clip that up.
Clip it up.
Clip it up.
Put the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
No, there's not, as of yet, or is there?
Or is there?
Dun dun dun.
I don't know. Mindy was on the show. Was she glowing? Did you?
She announced something. I don't know what it was, but she announced something. I'm hearing.
Yep, she did. She did. Who knows? Let the media speculate. So yeah, after that, for me, the hard part, like for most people, that's all they'll have to figure out is your will, your trust, cool, your assets. They're going to usually your spouse and your kids. You're square. You're good to go. For me, it now gets into the difficult part of my businesses, and basically not to compare myself to the Patagonia guy who's got a $3 billion company, right? That's a bit of a different situation. Actually, I think his situation was easier because his situation is that his company's fine. He don't need to do anything. Patagonia is going to run with or without him.
Totally.
Right. But for me, all these businesses, even though I'm pretty passive, still require me in some way or another. Right.
High level, especially.
Yeah. So figuring out what happens next with all these businesses is something I've had to think long and hard about with my wishes. And also, too, not even my wishes if I were to die, but also just setting them up in a way today while I'm alive where, hey, these things shouldn't totally depend on me, right? Like, how do I get these things rolling as standalone, things? And so it's like when I think about Future Flipper, the reason I'm trying to build Future Flipper into this whole media company with other faces and people is so that if I were to die today, I truly believe Future Flipper could continue to run and be great. And guys like Brian Davila and other people could step up, take the community by the horns and go dominate. And it would still be a force.
Totally.
And, kind of my ethos would still live on within Future Flipper. And, I like to think that for some of my companies and others I know aren't quite there. Right.
Right.
And so, I just think there's a lot that still needs to be done, but understanding the framework of I've never wanted the businesses to be solely dependent on me. I've always thought about how do I make this not about me and set it up in a way that does not require me in the long run.
Right. Well, I think that's part of the blessing of the fact that, like Yvon Chouinard, you weren't really looking to be the face of a business when you got into all this. Like this guy, let me read this quote about him so that everyone can kind of get a sense for who this guy is. This is from a New York Times piece. In some ways, the forfeiture of Patagonia is not terribly surprising coming from Mr. Chouinard. As a pioneering rock climber in California's Yosemite Valley in the 1960s, Mr. Chouinard lived out of his car and ate damaged cans of cat food that he bought for 5 cents apiece. Even today, he wears raggedy old clothes, drives a beat-up Subaru, splits his time between modest homes in Ventura and Jackson, Wyoming, and Mr. Chouinard does not own a computer or a cell phone. And one of his quotes was, "There's no difference between a pessimist who says, oh, it's hopeless, don't bother doing anything, and an optimist who says, don't bother doing anything. It's going to turn out fine anyway. Either way, nothing happens." So those are like when you said you're not like him on the numbers, I get what you're saying because he's got a $3 billion company. But on the other side of that, like he didn't want to be the face of these businesses.
Right.
And it worked out to his advantage because due to that fact, he built them to run without him.
I want to know how he built the businesses, period. With just listening to who he is
Being
now.
a rock climber guy, I know, man. But I think he started making the best gear. He's like, he knew the gear and he knew what the gap was, started making high quality.
Yeah, but I mean, did he have a cell phone ever? Like, did he ever use his computer, or was he just the gear guy, like in product development? Here's the shirt, and then after that, you guys sell it.
I was thinking the same thing today. Like, was he just a savant and an artist at designing the clothing so that he could?
Because I don't know that he's an operational guy.
Right.
Yeah, how do you get by without like what would happen to your businesses if you went with no computer and no cell phone for a week?
But also too, if I was a rock climbing hippie who just didn't care for business, like
Right.
I could get by without a phone and a computer. I'd figure it out because I'm also like very passionate about running a business.
Right. Yeah, good point. Like he almost spitefully built a $3 billion business.
Yeah, if I have to.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Man. Well, what are some of the innovations that you make in your businesses to get them to run without you?
That's a great question.
Well, let me first say, too, to finish the thought about how it works if I die. I actually had this conversation with Brian Davila recently. He's the CEO of Future Flipper, and he recently became a partner in Future Flipper.
Cool. Congrats,
And-
Brian.
Yep. Big congrats to him.
For sure.
And he essentially, we were just talking about what the partnership agreement would look like. And I was explaining to him, like, hey, here's why this needs to be structured the way it is, and I brought it to him. I go, Brian, what happens if you die? Right? Like, that's why this needs to play out the way this plays out. Right? I'm explaining it to him. And he goes, what happens if you die? And I was like, that's a good question.
Shoot.
And I was like, that's a question that, there's kind of a plan for every company on what happens. I mean, obviously, like each individual company has their own operating agreement, which spells it out what happens if a member dies. So whether it's me or one of my partners, it's in there on what happens. And then just in general, what happens to all my wealth and the ownership of these companies, et cetera. So, for me, like, just so everyone is clear, one of the things that happens is Noelle, she's already in charge of so many of these companies. So, like, some ownership reverts to her so that she's incentivized to, grow these companies, keep them going, all that stuff, because she's involved on the day-to-day. For those who don't know, Noelle's my sister. She's my only sibling. So she takes over a lot of it. Ownership obviously goes to my wife and the kids and everything else, the majority. And, the reason a lot of it goes, well, not a lot of it, but like, a portion goes to Noelle is because she is going to be the one to run it. Like, she replaces me essentially, whereas Mindy and my kids, they're not a part of it. They don't even know what to do, right? So there's that part of it. And really, there's the part of, hey, communicating with Noelle and everyone else, like, how do we get me not involved? Make it less about me, more about everything we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to build them all in that way.
Well, and I think you've seemed to have used your social media presence to fill in the gaps where you're needed. Like, I remember I came to you probably a year ago. I was like, hey, man, with my music stuff, I really need to outsource my content editing and a lot of the stuff that's just so time consuming. You said, man, just shout it out on social media and it'll work itself out. And I think you're right, man, because I've used that tactic with that and a lot of other different things that most people may not consider. You think, oh, how am I going to find good people to replace me? And you seem to have done a pretty good job of that. I mean, most of the people that you have, like Justin here, are even better than you. So
100%.
I like that, Blake.
that was
My co-host is a better host than me. My producer's better. Everyone's better.
Everyone's better.
Oh man.
But that should be the case, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you should go for that.
I should want people who are better than me in these roles. 100%.
What about the way that estate planning has changed your day-to-day? I'll give you an example for me. When I got life insurance, when I put a living trust in place, and until this recent realization that, oh, I might not be covered for medical debt, until that, I had a lot more peace day to day, whether that was business, with going on trips, whatever else. Like, when you have kids, as you guys both can probably agree, like, you stop and think for a second before you start doing stuff. Like, I used to be a wild man. I'd jump off a cliff. But now with the kids, it kind of changes the way I go about my life. And putting all these measures in place has helped to kind of get back to living, not dangerously, but living stress-free. Do you feel that way?
I don't know. I never lived as a crazy man before. So I don't think I've changed the way I live really at all. I think financially, and this is something I've told people a lot, it's a totally different subject, but it kind of relates, where I get these people who, at different points in your life, you're willing to take different amounts of risk. Okay. So whenever I get somebody who's thinking about getting into flipping houses, you know, they join Future Flipper, and they say, hey, Ryan, you know, here's my situation. What should I do? The advice is always different, because if you're a young 22-year-old with no family, no kids, nothing, you know, you can take way more risk than the guy who's 40 years old, 3 kids, wife, etc.
Totally.
They're totally different boats. But there's also the risk of your current wealth level too, right? So it actually cracks me up, because you see, you know, the wrong thing actually play out. So I see a lot of poor people very scared to take risk. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot of money. They're broke. And I'll be like, look, it's not me directly, but, you know, basically some version of it, like, look, you need Future Flipper. You have nothing to lose.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And they're like, well, I can't afford it. I have no money. And I'm like, put it on a credit card. And they're like, I'm not going to go into debt. And I'm like, so how do you think you're going to get out of this situation? Mm-hmm. You know, like, you're going to go into debt some way, whether it's credit card debt, whether it's debt to go buy a house to flip. Mm-hmm. You know, like, what do you think you're going to do? Do you think that you're going to earn your way out of this?
Right.
You don't make enough money. You've never figured out how to make money. Do you think you're miraculously going to figure it out without any mentorship or anything else? Like you, and let's like just look at the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is it doesn't work out and you have this credit card bill.
Right.
You're still broke.
You're in the same position.
There's nothing to lose.
You have literally nothing to lose when you are broke.
Right.
You declare bankruptcy because it just goes so bad. You're still broke. Like,
right.
You have nothing to lose. The poor person is the one where they're the most like scared to lose their money, when in reality, they need to be the most risk-taking because they have nothing to lose.
Right.
Now, I understand why rich people, on the other hand, or even middle class, I would say you fit great into this boat because you're very risk averse, and we've talked about this a lot.
Right.
Where financially, you're risk. Yeah, you'll jump off a mountain, but you're scared to go spend $1.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. And so, and I've like grilled into you
for years,
many times throughout the years. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, I don't understand why you could have that opinion.
Right.
Based on you'll do this, but you won't do this.
Yep. And for everyone else out there, I was on the Dave Ramsey plan for a while, where I'm like, no debt, I own everything. And then I'm like, man, this is slow going.
This is a slow grind.
Like, it's great for people who really need help not accruing massive debt on bad purchases, like boats and cars and shoes. But man, if you're trying to accrue wealth, good debt.
There's not one wealthy person I've ever seen that didn't take on debt.
Yeah.
They all take on debt to start a business. They all take on debt if they want to go public and raise money to grow the business. They all take on debt to buy real estate. Everyone takes on debt. That's the only way to grow.
It's the word debt. There should almost be 2 words for it. There's like bad debt, good debt.
Yep.
But, you know, there's survival debt, where a lot of these folks that you're talking about that won't spend money on Future Flipper or anything really, for that matter, their education to help them get out of their hole. They have all this survival debt of, you know, bills they've owed, and maybe it's bad purchases that they've made, or maybe it's just a bad hand that they're trying to dig out of.
They might have the medical debt, like you said.
Yeah, medical debt. That was my family growing up. But then the reason Dave Ramsey was good for me is because, you know, after pro ball, I was just trying to like wrap my head around what life needed to look like, and definitely didn't want to spend the cash that I had or use the assets that I had to live. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, living very frugally was something that came pretty naturally after the minor leagues. Mm-hmm. And once you get to that point where you have zero debt and you're looking at everything as, okay, I'm out of survival mode, my brain can work now. I think that for me, that's an experience that I had that took me from the dumb way of thinking you were just referencing to a more strategic, okay, let's choose our debt now. Instead of survival debt that you're just reacting to, let's choose a debt proactively, like Robert Kiyosaki would say in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Choose your assets, limit your liabilities, and take good debt on good assets that will make you rich.
The number one question I get asked by entrepreneurs is, Ryan, how do I create a personal brand like you have? How do I start monetizing social media? And I've been asked it so many times that I said, you know what? It's time to start a business and teach everyone exactly how I've done it. If you want to learn how I've been able to grow my social media following to 1.7 million followers in just 2 years, and you want to learn how we've gotten over 500 million views and turned those views into over $1 million a month in revenue, then Content Empire is for you. You see, there's a lot of people who are teaching how to go viral on one platform or how to run paid ads or funnels, but nobody has figured out how to organically merge the two. Most people think it's pay to play. But if you want to learn how to get organic content, build a fan base, build people who want to buy your products who don't need to be sold, then I want you to go to contentempire.io, apply for a free strategy session with my team. We will teach you how to build your business on social media and monetize. So once again, go to contentempire.io and we'll chat with you. One of my biggest problems with real estate brokerages is that they don't teach the things that are required for realtors and real estate agents to become truly wealthy. They want to teach people how to just do more transactions because that's what makes the brokerage money. Well, as we know, the real way to gain wealth is by investing in real estate. It's by doing your taxes properly. And even if you want to grow the agent side of your business, you're going to have to do things differently in today's world. You're going to have to be really good at social media. You're going to have to market differently. You're going to have to work on your sales game. A lot of those things are going to factor in whether you become wealthy in the long run. And I just realized that over time, brokerages just are not fully equipped to handle all those different verticals. And so that's why I created Wealthy Agent. Wealthy Agent is a platform to teach real estate agents how to become truly wealthy, how to grow their real estate agent business, how to invest properly, how to do their taxes, how to grow on social media to get more leads for free. And so if you are an agent and you are looking to grow that side of your business, go to wealthyagent.io. We would love to chat with you and see if you're a good fit for the program. We are building a community all across the country that you can tap into. So go to wealthyagent.io to book a call today. Well, and so I totally agree. The thing is, you're pretty normal in how you were thinking.
Right.
Right?
Average.
Yeah, just like normal. Like, dude, you have a great job, making multiple six figures a year. You had a really nice house, wife and kid. You're like living the dream for the majority of people. And your biggest fear was you were scared of anything that would compromise this thing you've built out, which is the dream.
Right.
Right. The middle class dream, I would call it.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's tough once you've reached like a certain level of contentment where you're like, dude, the risk of buying this one house, even though to me, I'm like, this is not a risk.
Yeah.
It's just too great.
Right.
And that's for you, the mental block that you had for a long time. And even for wealthy people, let's just call them millionaires, multimillionaires, they think the same thing, right? As this real estate market downturn is happening, there are people like myself who are like, let's roll, baby. It's time to make some money. And everybody else is scared. That's when the big dog eats.
Yeah, right.
Right? But then there are those who are like, oh no, like I've built up my wealth for the last 10, 20 years. I cannot afford to lose it. It's just too risky.
Right.
Right? And these are wealthy multimillionaires. They're not wrong. Like I'm just like, dude, that's your prerogative.
Yeah,
like your risk tolerance is that. And you may be right because it may have taken you 20 years or 10 years to build to that. Whereas me, I built it super fast. Right. And I know if I were to lose it, I'll make it back like that because I know how to make money and I know how to make it quick.
Right.
So to that end, I am willing to take more risks than most people because I have so much confidence in myself and my own abilities that I'm like, let's roll, baby.
Yeah.
I'll try anything new. I might crash and burn and I'll figure out how to fix it.
Well, dude, and a lot of that I think is your faith, which is something that like we haven't really talked about it yet on the show, but when I came to visit, so Ryan and I played pro baseball together. I would come to visit him probably twice a year just to hang out, catch up. And there was a time where, being a musician that is also running a 9-to-5 life with a family, there's been a level of discontentment, even though you say it's like kind of the American dream, the middle class dream. For me, it wasn't because it's like, man, I really feel a calling to spend my energy and my life on something that isn't going to generate me as much money. And you can relate to this, JP,
For sure.
as a musician yourself and an artist.
Do you have to be a musician to be on this podcast?
Yeah, I think so. Ryan, you need to play us a little something.
You know, I tell Mindy all the time because she's now on the worship team as playing the keys.
Lord for the Lord.
She plays the Nord for the Lord, and I always tell her, I'm like, tell the worship team, you know, just let me on whatever I need to tithe to get on the worship team. I'm game. Like, just tell me, let me get on the worship team. You could cut my mic off, and I'm good.
Just let you up there, the hype guy.
Just take my mic out. I watched Kirk Franklin with Maverick City just run around and not sing at all. Like, I could do it.
You got the energy for that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I could see it. But to tie it back to what I was saying about the reason that you're fearless, like, obviously, yes, you believe in your abilities. You've grown in like a pretty awesome skill set, to the point where, like, a part of the reason why you asked me to be on this is because I do so much random research into everything, and you're still the guy that I go to. And so there's a lot of people that come to me and ask me stuff. You're the guy I go to and say, hey, Ryan, what do you think about this, XYZ? And the amount of skills that you've built over the last few years has been pretty awesome. But what really hit me is when I was like, going to move out to Vegas, buy a house out here, start buying more properties. We've bought 3 since I came to see you a year ago. And he said, Blake, I'm not going to lose my family. Like, my family's going to be here. Like, what's there to worry about? I've got Mindy and the kids, and, you know, a confident approach. I expect what I do to work. So why not just do it? And that's kind of like tying back to this little quote about whether you're a optimist or a pessimist. If you're a pessimist, oh, don't do anything, it's going to be the same either way. Optimists are like, yeah, it's going to be fine either way. But to be a doer is pretty awesome, and I think you have to have some level of faith, whether it's a crazy entrepreneurial faith in yourself, or like for you of course tie it back to your faith in God. But
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I
been
think
inspiring for.
we just finished that in Bible study in James. You know, don't be just like a talker of the faith.
Yeah.
Be a doer. You
Right.
know, faith without actions is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, right? Like I hear people all the time, Christian or not, that talk about faith, and they're like, yeah, you know, I got so much faith in God and all this stuff, and then all I see is fear.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, really? Because if you were living in faith, you wouldn't have all this fear.
Yeah, right.
Faith and fear are opposite.
Yep.
Fear is not trusting. Faith is fully trusting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, there were times when I was about to move out here and little things came up, and I remember you saying, I smell fear, boy. You know? And it would take me back a notch. I'm like, man, you're right. I'm trying to talk myself out of this because it's terrifying to take that first step. And just to like put some numbers, because I know your audience is probably a numbers,
Yeah.
you know, like we all are, numbers motivated. So Ryan was trying to talk me basically into, hey, Blake, you should move out here and put your house in North Carolina on Airbnb, because you've been talking about it for 3 years and you haven't done anything.
Yeah. I'm like, bro.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, man. When I came out here and visited, of course I see your success, but what drew me here wasn't that. It was the faith. And I was like, man, I'd like to be around this and the group of people that you've attracted to yourself. So we did. We threw our house up on Airbnb, leap of faith. I tried to talk myself out of it 20 times. You called me out for being scared. And now our place in North Carolina has rented on Airbnb for 7 months out. It's rented out through January now at like $10K a month on a $2,000 mortgage.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And
Your that cash flow pays for your current house in Vegas plus profit.
yeah, plus profit.
You're living for free out here.
Living for free. And it's crazy to say, because most people would probably look at this and be like, oh, you're crazy, man. That's kooky. It's just good business. But there were so many times when I was on the way out here where I was praying about it. Hey, just shut this thing down, God, if it's not what you want. You know, like fearfully. And
Please tell them we have to do this.
dude, so many little things happened. Like we listed our car because I didn't want to ship 2 cars. We had an older car, and immediately, bing, Facebook, a pastor up the street that ran a church was like, hey, I want to buy this for my daughter. Boom. and everything was made easy. There was 4 or 5 incidences like that. And anyways, I guess my point in this whole spiel is that what you put out a lot of the time as, you know, your entrepreneurial swagger and confidence in yourself, all that is valid, but what it ties back to, that I wonder if your audience sees all the time, it's something that I've seen being buddies for so long, is that you just have a very deep trust in your faith, and it empowers you to just be really successful at anything you want to do without the fear.
I want to add to that too, for sure, because I know for me, like you said, Ryan was telling you to make the leap, right? To take the jump, take the risk. And I didn't have a Ryan when I made my leap. I had $3,000. Half of that went to moving everything, and the other half went to first month's rent when I moved to Vegas. But my faith allowed me to believe that no matter what, I was covered, right? And so if you're listening, you know what I mean, and you're watching this, understand that you don't need the successful Ryan who some may hear you say that and think like that's your backing. Like there's it's not a real risk because you got Ryan to help you when you need it. Even, you know, in a situation like mine where I didn't have that, where, I mean, and I moved with a torn patella tendon, so I didn't even have a job when I moved. I just knew that, okay, if I make this leap and it all makes sense, I'm in the media space. What's the best place in the country to go for media? It was LA, it was Atlanta at the time, and then it was Vegas. LA was too expensive. Atlanta, I didn't want to be around any more mosquitoes moving from Chicago.
I hear you.
And Vegas was that perfect middle spot. And so it was like, all right, let's take the leap. Let's believe that if this is meant and this is God willing, that he's going to work everything out. I mean, my wife drove across the country by herself to do it while I was having surgery. But all I knew at the moment was, we okay. We got this. And I mean, I was surrounded by people that was like, oh, this is a sign. You got hurt. This is a sign. You can't go. Yeah. This must mean. And, you know, I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to point that out too, because like you said, after you make the leap, then your faith builds. And then you can make more leaps.
Yes.
When I took on this position, I had a bunch of people, you know, even family members saying, what happens if Ryan quits social media tomorrow? What are you going to do?
Fear.
And it was like, yeah, you just can't move in that way. You know, you won't achieve anything in moving in that type of mindset. But I just wanted to make that clear. Like, you don't need a Ryan telling you to.
But even when you have me telling you, it took me telling Blake 3 years to do something. Yeah. I'm like, I don't even know anymore, dude. Like,
right. But you know what? The difference was, it wasn't me. I didn't change. You didn't change your tune. It was the fact that I kind of got a little more serious about my walk over the last couple years, and it built to a point where it wasn't a business decision. It was.
You had no business reason to move out here.
No, no, not at all.
Yeah, you already had your job. You're remote. You could live anywhere.
Yeah,
it was strictly you wanted to be around other believers and people, you know, with faith doing things.
I came out to see you a couple times and realized, like, man, this is a very good environment to be in. And for me right now, this is a very good environment to be in. And
look, and now you're the co-host of the Wealthy Way podcast.
I know.
Look how far you've come.
I made it.
You've made it. JB, why don't you tell them your story of how you even started working for me? I don't think we've told that story on air.
No, I don't think so. So it's funny, like, when I left Chicago, I had a few bad experiences just as I left, right? So like there was a conflict at the church I was going to. Like I said, I was injured. You know, there was a bunch of stuff happening that season that I was like, all right, what's going on? Like, this is not what you thought and what you planned for, you know, at this age. And funny enough, and this is why I always tell people to listen to women, because they're a lot smarter than we are. My wife didn't give me the option of attending church. She was like, you've grown up your whole life in it. You know better than to have this feeling towards the church now that you've had a bad experience. And so, you know, we actually visited Ryan's home church first. And then we found another one just up the street from that one that we really enjoyed. And it was through that community that stuff started to happen. And I found it in myself again to just dedicate myself to the serving part of ministry. And it was like, all right, whatever they ask, like I didn't care. If I had to move cones in the parking lot, I was going to do it. But I was like, I was blessed enough to where they can see talent and they can see potential, and I moved into the a media space in the church. And so serving is what I found a lot of times the result of that, and dedicating myself to it, I was being blessed over and over again. And it was even allowing me to bless others. And there was at one point of that season that I was like, now I just want to be surrounded around like-minded individuals, successful individuals, and Christian men. I was working for an armored truck company, and it was just toxic. It was like the men were working all day long because they didn't want to go home to their wives. Like they were, everything about it was toxic. And I was like, I don't want to be around this because it's poisonous. And so a buddy of mine, Omar, just sent me a screenshot of one of Ryan's Instagram stories that's like, I'm looking for, a editor.
There you go.
And just like that, a relationship was built. My first conversation with Ryan, he goes, yeah, I'm just looking for an editor to do this podcast that I'm releasing. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, how do you know Omar? I was like, I know him from church. He's like, well, if he trusts you, then I trust you. And it was a quick conversation. He was like, be at my office this day, blah, blah, blah. And we had another conversation. But what I found most interesting, that it wasn't even about editing. It wasn't about, the podcast. The conversation was more about life and what my values were. And now, obviously in hindsight, I can see why he does it, because it's what he bases his decisions on. But yeah, it was that type of dedication, the risk of taking the move, and then being open to new things and opening to following what you feel in your heart. It essentially led to the opportunity. You
didn't even mention the craziest part about that story.
What part?
The fast.
Yeah, that's a big part of that, because we were on a Daniel fast for 10 days, and I had talked to you maybe right before it started initially, and then on day 10 we kind of closed the deal and was working on, I was putting in my 2-week notice, and it was like when you truly believe and you commit to it. And honestly, it was like the first time I had like fasted legitly. Like I didn't find a way out of this. It was like, in this season, I really need to do this. And so on day 10 is when everything kind of fell into place, Man. It really started a journey for me, like, even just, education wise. It's a bunch of stuff I've learned in just that time period that there's no other way I would have access.
Dude, from editor to co-host of the Wealthy Way podcast.
Mama, I made it.
Crazy, man.
You guys made it, dude.
Well, and just the letting go, right? The feeling of letting go. That's, if in a nutshell, it's like you're holding on so tight to all the control you have over manipulating every aspect. You don't want to lose a dime to risk or to any of the things we just talked about. And it ties back into the estate planning conversation, because the fear that I have felt melt away just from having my family looked out for to the best of my ability. Like, there's still some things that I need to address, and you too, I guess, to restructure your will and trust. And, but at the end of the day, like, there's still a piece there.
I think it all comes back to, as you were saying, like holding on to the money. I think it all goes back to your belief. And, we're talking about faith, but your belief in what you view money as, right? Because there's so many people that view money as, I gotta have it. If I lose it for good. I'm never getting it back. And, this is very hard.
Yep.
And, I value this money so much because for whatever reason, like it's idolatry. And for me, I really have never valued money that much. Like I told you, I live frugally. I was chilling. I've always thought I was rich when I was broke. Like I literally, I'm good, dude.
Like when you got that Veloster.
When I got the Hyundai Veloster in 2012.
Oh man, we were rolling in that thing.
Man, that was we don't talk about that.
Part of that though is the minor league life.
Yeah,
it conditioned you to be content with nothing.
Yeah, for those wondering, the story about a 2012 Hyundai Veloster, brand new, paid 20 G's for it. I was so proud of it because I'm like, dude, this was the best deal ever. I got a brand new car. Gets 40 mpg. It's the girliest, dumbest looking car ever. But you know what? this was a great deal. And then I ended up getting rid of it 6 months later because I'm like, this car sucks.
Yeah.
And took a loss on it. But nonetheless, I thought I was rolling in style and luxury in that Hyundai Veloster. And so nothing has changed. Like I drive the Porsche now and I'm like, I still feel cool like I did when I had the Veloster. Though I'm much cooler now. Yeah. So objectively.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of shared that with me too, because, you know, with the whole social media content, whatever gets attention is going to be good for business. And in a nutshell, like you're also helping people a lot with, I mean, I've seen a lot of the success stories with future flippers. So either way, the end result is a positive thing. But when we talked about, because, you know, I came out to visit you intermittently, and there was a time where like your success had skyrocketed, and I'm like, I wonder if Ryan's going to be the same guy. Like, I'm about to go stay with Ryan now, and he went from, you know, couch flipping to being like, you know, a multi-millionaire. And you know, so I'm testing the waters. Hey man, so how's everything been going? Like,
who are you?
What's new? Who are you? What do you care about? What kind of shoes are you wearing? What are those things? And you know, we got to talking about it, and it was the Porsche that I started talking about. You're like, you know what, dude? I still don't care. And I'm like, whew, like he's still the same guy. But you're like, but the more I've learned that, you know, really nice things, world-class things in general, do a lot for my marketing, the more I've learned to love world-class quality.
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
You know?
Yeah, I've learned to appreciate people who are world-class at whatever they do.
Yeah.
You know, Porsche makes a world-class car, even though I've had my ups and downs with it. Just the quality and like you see the build of it versus a Toyota, which Toyota's been what I've driven my whole life. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, Toyota's reliable, but by no means is it like this world-class built car. It's just, it's a car that you don't have to worry about. It's like Chipotle. Yeah. Toyota is like Chipotle. Totally. It's great. And, you know, but it's not a Michelin star restaurant.
Yep. It's not tuna pizza.
It's not tuna pizza from Yellowtail, you know? And so when I get tuna pizza from Yellowtail, I appreciate it. I'm like, dude, how did this guy come up with this?
Yeah, right.
This is the craziest dish ever. And like the tuna and everything is so great. And I've just learned like, yo, I appreciate people who are world-class at what they do. When I see a YouTube video, not for the entertainment, but I notice the editing. I notice how they hooked him in with the story. I'm like, dude, this guy is a world-class creator at how he structures storytelling. I can just see it. When somebody is a salesperson and they sell me on something, half the time I buy it because I'm just like, dude, that was a good sales pitch.
Yeah,
like
you appreciate.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna buy that.
Totally.
And so that's kind of where I've been now. Is like I appreciate people who are world class at what they do.
Yeah, and so it's less about like the flex, and it's more about the art of being world class at whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, you know, you create something that's like the best in the world, like Porsche. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Imagine the engineer that dedicated his life to designing, you know, one little component of the vehicle, and he gets his dream job at Porsche, and now he gets to live.
And that was the thing too. So I recently bought another Rolex. So like my thing is now I'm going to buy like one watch a year, at least. But you know, I've been getting one watch a year now, and this year I got the Rolex Rose Gold Day Date, which is also known as the Presidente, from what I'm told. And cool. That watch is, you know, super nice and cool, and obviously, but like, you know, you hear these guys talk about all the intricacies of making a watch and the amount of time and hand hours and things that go into it. And I'm like, dude, it's crazy that this watch was made that way. You know, and Rolex is different because they're manufactured in bulk, a lot of them, but you know, like an AP or a Patek or, you know, whatever. So I've just learned to appreciate the nice things, and, you know, life's a little different now too. I can afford them. Like buying a Rolex isn't going to bankrupt me before, like it would have before.
Totally.
Right. So,
well, and you can take that outlook even if you don't have millions of dollars. Like somebody like me, I've got 3 kids. I'm not going to buy a Rolex this year, Ryan.
Okay.
Don't judge me, but I won't be buying a Rolex this year. But, at the same time, like that mindset makes life a lot more enjoyable, man. Like whether it's YouTube videos or as a musician, when I see good art.
Well, I've seen you buy like super expensive things that are like random.
Good point.
And I was like, why'd you buy that? And you're like, you don't get it. This craft of like, this guy did this guy. I'm like, okay. Like before I'd have been like, dude, whatever. That doesn't matter. But now I'm like, I get it.
Exactly. Yes. It's like an artist's mindset, I think.
Yeah. No, I appreciate good things. But cool. Well, I think this is a great episode for those who are worrying about what's after, how to set up estate planning. I think we dived in some good stuff. Everyone, if you like this, make sure you leave that 5-star review on Apple. Also, too, I might just read one of your reviews and shout you out on the next episode. So make sure you leave those reviews. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wealthy Way podcast. If you got value, there are 2 things I want you to do. The first is go to wealthyway.com and get access to all of our free stuff. You can download our courses for free. You can use the Wealthy Way planner for free. You can subscribe to our newsletter. All of it's free. It is such amazing value. I want you to go take advantage of that. The second thing is if you could go to Apple and leave a 5-star review, or if you're watching this on YouTube and subscribe, that would be amazing. It would mean a lot to me. In fact, if you leave a review, I might just shout you out on the next episode because we are reading those. So definitely check it out, and thanks for watching.